Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. This is another one of our Community Live replays, a session that happened at our recent Community Live Users Conference that really showcases the success of one of our OnBase customers. And in this particular case, I'm really pleased to have Jim and Mark, who are joining us today from the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. So
Hello.
we have a few. Hey, Jim.
Hey.
Great.
Go ahead.
So we have a few things that we're going to cover today. First of all, I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes about what OnBase is, because we're very pleased to have a number of tribal governments joining us today who may have heard about this session from the recent TribalNet conference or hearing a little bit about the United Nations from another organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what OnBase is so everybody has a good beginning. And then we're going to shift over to Jim, and he's going to talk a little bit about the OnBase solution that the nation is using, having an enterprise vision, so the investment that you make in this type of technology can be stretched as far as possible, and therefore its benefits can go as far as possible. And then some of his ideas about enterprise success. And we're lucky as well that one of his really good team of helpers is available on the line, Mark, to answer any questions that may relate to something that he's been doing for Oneida. So just to get started, I mentioned that this was a session at our annual users conference for OnBase, which we call Community Live. And that means that everybody in the room typically already owns OnBase. But because we have a lot of people joining us who are maybe new to the world of document management or something called ECM, let's talk a little bit about OnBase and specifically how it's helping tribal, local, state, and some federal government agencies do a better job for their constituents and their members. So OnBase is a solution that people call ECM, which stands for Enterprise Content Management. Sometimes in shorthand we call it document management. In practical terms, it means shifting all of that paper that you use to do the everyday services for your members or your constituents to something that's digital. So it becomes a digital rendition of that paper file that we have to store and manage and file and print and copy and all of these kinds of activities. The analysts call that type of solution ECM, or Enterprise Content Management, and once you move past this idea of sort of going paperless, an ECM solution offers a number of other tools that could really help you do a better job for members or constituents. For example, once you go digital, it makes it very easy to make documents available on your website, or it allows you to automate a process and use electronic forms instead of having to rely on paper. It lets you do things like records management and really protect the security of that content or document piece. It can let you do things like have mobile access to things that you may have once held as a paper file. So enterprise content management sort of starts with that idea of going paperless, but the idea of that type solution is that it can do things like automate and support mobile activities that you do, support your website. And in the end, what we're hoping for is sort of faster and cheaper services for our members, that maybe we'd be able to stretch our dollars and do a better job, make our dollars go farther, offer more programs, but also to offer them in a convenient way, because increasingly government sees trends where people want to interact online, or they can't necessarily visit your office or an office where there are services available. So we're seeing a lot of value for government using something like OnBase because of those trends and because we face budget and staffing challenges at times, and we can eliminate some of the burden of workload by going paperless. So with that kind of background, and I'm happy to answer any questions later on, Jim, why don't you tell the story of the Oneida Nation for us?
Sure. Well, thank you for joining us. what we're going to talk about today is how we got started as an organization, why we got started, and where we are today, and where we plan on going moving forward. 10 years ago, well, let me start here with the organization. Oneida is a federally recognized Indian tribe. We have approximately 15,000 enrolled members. We're located in the northeast Wisconsin area. Reservation boundaries fall within 2 counties and a number of municipalities, including the city of Green Bay. We have 2,700 employees. We have 60 locations within the reservation boundaries, and our operations include a number of gaming sites, hotels, retail, farm, law enforcement, all of the things you see on the screen there. We've recently started our own court system, so we have judiciary now, and much more. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? In 2004, I was approached by our Department of Land Management. Oneida has a reservation boundary of about 65,000 acres. Over the years, most of that property was sold to non-tribal members. With the onset of gaming and the revenues from gaming, the tribe has an initiative to reacquire 51% of their land by the year 2020, and quite frankly are on track to meet that goal. So as the tribe is acquiring property, they have to go through a process of moving that from a fee to trust status with the Bureau of Land Management, the BIA. So I was asked to approach or to work with land management to assist with their records. They had a high-density record storage system where all of the paperwork and files for these acquisitions were stored. And they were taking the folders of each acquisition, deeds, abstracts, land use documents, environmental impact statements, all of the necessary paperwork that was required to move that to a trust status. And they were rekeying the contents of those folders into a system that was not designed for that. And when I discussed what they were doing, and well, how long does it take you to put one of these into the system that you're entering it? And they gave me a number, and I measured the lineal footage of their files and said, well, if you don't add another piece of paper, you'll finish this in about 100 years. So this is not the solution. We need to look at a document management or content management solution. So we started out looking at this as a departmental solution. We've done all the process work. We were almost completed with the RFP development and looking at the workflow from our land department, acquiring the land, doing all the paperwork, moving that off of the file systems in the county to our register of deeds, and then applying to put that property into a trust status. And I had a light bulb go on in the middle of that process that, well, we're looking at a departmental solution. We should really be looking at the enterprise-wide solution, and stop the process and ask for a meeting with our general managers, our CFO, director of land management, and a number of individuals, and laid out the case for looking for an enterprise-wide solution. got consensus from the group, and then I walked out of the room thinking, well, you know, if I mess up land, I've got a problem. But if I mess up Oneida, I got a big problem. So I felt that we needed some assistance in that, and we did engage DocuLabs to help us with the development of an enterprise-wide solution RFP. DocuLabs is an independent company. They do not sell product, but they do assist organizations in developing their requirements and help them through the acquisition process. We had started out with the idea to interview approximately 50 business units. We got through 25 of them, and all of the answers were coming back the same, and decided we have enough information now to move forward with the RFP development. Let's go on to the next slide. So as we approach this problem, we thought there's basically 3 reasons that you would implement a enterprise content management solution. One was for compliance. The other was for consolidation of disparate departmental systems. And the third was to gain operational efficiencies. We did not have a compliance issue. We did not have multiple departmental systems. We had one system in our law office, but we felt the reason for doing this was to gain operational efficiencies and to save money. And that was our motivation going into this, looking for a solution that could service all of the 60-plus departments that we had within the organization, with the caveat that there could be a department that would need their own standalone system that we then referred to as boutique systems. Our concerns were the inability to find documents, excessive printing, and manual distribution. We were running out of storage space. We had concerns over retention and retention schedules, and we didn't have a well-defined record management policy and process. If we can go on. So our main driver was to gain control then over those land acquisition documents. The problem we had with them is files would be removed from the high-density storage area. Things would be put into the files that should not necessarily be a part of that file. Paper would get removed and not necessarily put back. So just managing the integrity of those files became a big concern. So the initiative there was to scan all those files in. Once it was scanned in, that file was locked down, and anybody needing access would get access to that file electronically. As I said before, we changed the focus from departmental to enterprise solution, but the land management was our toe in the water on this thing. We're very paper intensive, multiple copies of the same document throughout the organization. As we go from department to department implementing OnBase, we'll inevitably find a file cabinet full of business committee minutes. Every department, we must have had 50, 60, maybe 100 copies of that same document throughout the organization. Now all of those minutes are scanned in our records management area. They're made available to tribal members to research. We have full text indexing over them. We have a workstation kiosk in records management that members can do their research on their own. much better access and lots of savings. We also had a challenge with our budget process. Running on a fiscal year, anything that we budgeted as a capital expense had to be spent by the end of the fiscal year. And we knew going into this project, this could not be implemented in one fiscal year. So I approached our steering committee and said, you know, I've got a problem with our budget process. We're going to be entering into a project that is going to go for years. It's going to require us to capitalize it over time. And I don't want to buy things just because I'm going to lose the money at the end of a fiscal year. And asked them how they funded building projects, because, for example, we were putting up a new nursing home, and it was a multi-year process. And they said, well, we have this capital improvement budget where the money is reserved, it's set aside, and that money then it can be used as needed. And they agreed then to create that type of a budget process for this project, and quite frankly, it's been expanded to other large projects that we do in IT. So that's given us the flexibility to project out over 3 years the dollars that we plan to spend as we move from department to department. It also then puts all of the OnBase related acquisitions into a budget that we manage within IT, so end users are tasked with the need to put in capital budget requests if they're planning to use OnBase. So then our next, we had our land management, they were on their way. Our next challenge was then to find another end user department that could be a champion, and that was our higher ed department. Our higher ed department funds dollars for tribal members for post-secondary education. So they essentially are a financial aid department for college students. And we had a manager in that department that worked well with the application that we had developed in-house for her, and she gravitated to OnBase. And as we had other departments asking, well, what is this OnBase? What does it do? We would send them to Cheryl in our higher ed department and have her demonstrate, and she was selling OnBase to the rest of the organization. Let's go to the next slide. We ran into a question of records management and document management. We have a historic records department and an archival department, and at the same time they were approaching our leadership to do things with protecting historic documents and archiving important documents. And the business committee said, well, go and talk to IT. They're doing this document management. But document management and record management are two completely different disciplines. So we then incorporated a records management review into the project, worked with our director of records management, and again, an outside consultant that specializes in records management, looking at legal requirements, taxonomy, retention schedules, destruction plans, how the gaming compact would affect any of our records management, and developed a whole policies and procedures and process around records, to the point where now when we go into a new department to implement OnBase, it's very typical that our records management director would join in that initial meeting, looking at their records, setting up their taxonomy, setting up their retention plans. He's developed destruction policies, paper destruction policies once it's scanned into an electronic system. So developing those SOPs was really important as far as managing the paper documents, destroying the paper documents when we're capable of doing that, and then setting up retention schedules for the electronic documents. So let's go on with the next slide. So this is a statement that I made a number of years ago. We have changed the way we do business using OnBase. The amount of paper savings, the amount of time saving that we've had is just unbelievable. And it's incremental, and sometimes you can save bits and pieces of time, but yet it requires the management of those bits and pieces of time to really get the savings. Let's go on to the next slide. Our OnBase solution, I think we have more than, yes? Okay, are we okay? Our OnBase solution has 3.9 million documents in OnBase, and I think there's more than that today. We're retrieving closer to 20,000 documents a week out of the system. We have approximately 600 users that use the OnBase solution on a daily basis. Let's go on. Here's a short list of the departments, and I'll just give you some time to read that. These solutions include just capture and store. They include workflow. They include integration to a number of systems. We have made extensive use of an OnBase module called Application Enabler. What that allows you to do is to pick a field off of a screen. For example, in our ERP system, if I'm on a purchase order screen, I can double-click on the purchase order number, and we've application-enabled that screen so that it will then launch OnBase and will pull up any documents that are associated with that purchase order number stored in OnBase. So I might get the purchase order itself, the hard copy of the purchase order. I might get the RFP. I might get a statement of work. I might get a contract. Any of the documents that have been stored in OnBase that have a keyword linked to the keyword that's on the screen that I'm application enabled will be pulled up. We use this extensively throughout the organization. It's probably one of the most productive tools that we have. In our health center, our electronic medical record system can pull up documents from an outside provider. We can pull up HIPAA release forms, travel ID, insurance cards, driver's license. All of that information can be pulled up by being on a registration screen or a medical records screen. Let's go on to the next slide. Here are some of the modules that we're using. So we have integrated OnBase to our Centricity electronic medical record system using HL7 module for interfacing that. Mark and Crystal Bouget, one of my other developers, have done work with automating the filling of the keywords on a document from a database. We've, as I said before, we've done an OCR rendition of all of our business committee minutes for decades and full text index them so they're available for travel members to do research. If we've given them the ability to pull up documents based on a word search, and then if they want to save those documents, we save them down to a USB drive for them and they can take them off-site. Let's go on to the next. So our future projects are to stay current with the software version. We're currently in a upgrade on our servers, and we're looking at an upgrade of OnBase to the most current version of 16. We have recently signed an agreement to implement agenda management. Agenda management is an application that will assist in the management of the business committee. The business committee is our governing body, similar to what a county board would be, or a city council. And we do plan on, we do video capture of those meetings, and we can then link the agenda into a section of the video, so that'll be able to be viewed online after the meeting is completed. We're moving into historic document preservation. Our cultural heritage has a number of historic documents that are important to the tribe and the culture. Many of them are fragile, and by scanning them, we can allow access to those documents and not damage the document. We can, through a virtual rescan, enhance the quality of a document that is often more readable than the original. We're using a high-end book scanner right now, where we can take a bound document and put it on that scanner, and it will remove the curve, allowing us to scan the contents of a book without damaging the binding. Moving to Unity Client, and we have right now a backlog of 39 new requests, and the backlog seems to grow, not to shrink. Let's go on with another slide. Savings for OnBase. We've calculated the savings of just the retrieval of the documents using a factor of $15 an hour plus benefits with a 6-minute time for retrieving a document from a file cabinet and returning that document in a manual setting, that we're saving close to $2 million a year in savings. Now, that's bits and pieces here and there, but over time, for example, in our HR department, we've been able to not fill a vacant position because of the savings by work reallocation. We moved our HR department from a standalone building to a newer administrative building, and as that move was being planned, the building engineers came to us and said, well, because you're moving HR to the second floor, we're going to have to reinforce that building floor, that second floor, in order to carry the weight of the paper that's existing in the HR department. So rather than do the structural improvement on the building, we sent 6 scanners over to HR, and we just scanned everything in. We didn't do a lot of fancy indexing. We got them scanned in with employee number, social security number, and took that file and got it into a digitized form and did not move any of the paper to HR. We've had agencies come in and look at what we're doing. We've had folks from NIGA look at our processes that we're using the gaming side, reporting back to other tribal governments that they should look at what Oneida is doing with the document management. We've also had BIA look at our land management process and getting high marks on that, again recommending our solution to other tribal governments. So let's go on. Any questions? I had a slide in a different presentation that I didn't show. We had a room filled with box, or a building, I should say, filled with box storage. Thousands of boxes of storage. Our cost of that box storage was $56 per box per year. The building has been emptied and it's been reallocated to other use at this time. So are there any questions?
Hey, Jim. This is Terry Jones back again. And so I'm thinking a little bit about your forward activities, but also a little bit about the automation stuff. And I think we talked a lot about the records management and the sheer cost of paper. Could you give us an example of a workflow project that you did that you feel like is very potentially valuable to tribes to consider?
Okay. I'll let Mark step in on this. He's the one who implements those.
Yeah, I think probably one of our biggest gains was from our EEO office, which takes care of disciplinary actions and such. And what we did there is when a disciplinary action comes in, it needs to be responded to in a certain amount of days. So we send it, first thing we do is send off an email that came in to certain people to let them know that it's there. And then once that is due or hasn't been attended to within a certain number of days, they get a follow-up email. That information is also shared with some other departments within the tribe, our backgrounds department and such, so that they can also act on any of those disciplinary actions also. So that's one of the areas of workflow we've put in.
And are you, I know you mentioned kind of a little bit about the casino management. Is there anything there that you want to expand on a little bit for tribal governments that are looking into ways of doing a better job of managing casinos, or maybe doing it in a more easy way, something that you feel is an efficiency gain for you?
Well, we're doing some fairly simple things over there. We're capturing a lot of the exception reports that are necessary. Over at Gaming, we've done some simple things with Gaming Lab International documents that come out. We were making multiple copies and filling 3-ring binders and sending those out rather than just taking that electronic file and sweeping it into OnBase and then making it available to anybody that's necessary. I know they do some things with authenticating signatures that are stored in the OnBase. Our security folks are using OnBase for their incident reports. There are so many other areas that we just kind of fall into this. First of all, understand you can implement OnBase in a very modular way. You don't, I mean, we have a lot of modules that are in place and using, but we're only using a fraction of what's available. But you can start small, get some wins, and then it grows from there. I gave you an example of one where you just see the value. We have a department that does reviews of disciplinary action. It's our, and once all of those disciplinary actions are resolved, the information gets sent over to HR. Well, it's our personnel commission. So we get called by our personnel commission to say, okay, we got these stacks of paper, we got these files of paper, we want that scanned into OnBase. And Crystal was working with them, and she said, well, you send those over to HR once the case is closed. And we said, yes. She said, well, HR has already scanned that into OnBase. All of that paper already exists in OnBase. All we need to do is give you access to those document types, put you in the group that allows access to the document types. So yeah, it becomes something that kind of builds on itself over time, and there are opportunities from very complex. You know, the agenda management is going to be a significant effort, both on our technical side and the use of our integrator, Naviant. But there are a lot of small things that can be done to get gains. And every time you see paper, you start thinking, why do we have this paper? You know, here's an OnBase.
Well, these are, we really appreciate yours and Mark's time today in sharing these stories. We're going to wrap it up now. If you have any further questions, please feel free to send them to us or to visit onbase.com, or perhaps to contact Jim and find out more about Oneida, ECM, OnBase, and all the great work that they're doing there. Thanks to everybody for their time today.